back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively taking the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out on the road. I'm getting the dates together into April and May. I know we're going to be at Costas the first week of April, celebrating 50 years of the Maryland Lottery. We have the scratch-offs. We've had a few winners already with the old school wishbone. Look at that format. It feels like the 70s all over again. Window Nation, our friends, 866-90Nation. I'm wearing the shirt as well today. You buy two, you get two free. And by the way, 2 years, 0% financing. That's a pretty good deal. My wife and I were talking about financing and cars and this and that. And by the way, Dennis will be here on Thursday, too, from 3 until 5, driving you home from Coons Baltimore Ford. And when you get the breaking news that Lamar Jackson has signed a something with the something with somewhere, it's all going to be by our friends at Coons Ford, Security Boulevard. So go look them up. I have abstained in recent weeks from opening up my Rolodex and finding every Peter King and every Gary Davenport and every Mike Tanier and every Aaron Schatz. But I started to sort of unleash that after a couple of weeks of Radio Row memories after I was thrown out of the Super Bowl. This is a guy who's been on many times from Bleacher Report. He was really kind of a fantasy sports dude. And I was kind of wondering, with all this gambling we're here doing now at the casino, and I'm watching the Terps game at Hollywood Casino and Barstool Sports on Thursday as the Terps take on West Virginia. The fantasy thing, is that evaporated, Gary, or is everybody just straight gambling now? Or was that sort of the entryway drug?
Fantasy football is as strong as ever. And then you've got DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports, is kind of the gap between season-long fantasy and just gambling on games. And then, of course, Ohio just legalized sports gaming January 1st. So, I've laid down a few shekels on a couple of games here and there.
How are you doing? I mean, you think you're smart, right? We all think we're smart. Like, I'm doing this thing with Hollywood Casino, and Luke and I are going to pick games in September. So, I was really good at doing it in the 90s on the year, so good that I had bookies and Sharpies, back in the 90s that went to Vegas wanting to know what I thought of the Raiders defense this week. And I'm thinking, I remember being with Marvin Lewis many, many years ago, and we were watching film with Jim Schwartz, New Browns defense coordinator when he was we were all young men then. And Marvin said to me, I can't believe people bet on this. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I coach it. You know what I mean? So for you, the reason I reached the dudes like you, and we'll get the fantasy, we'll have a good time with the gambling and all that. We have March Madness, green beer. But this Lamar Jackson thing, bro, I see you writing about it on your Facebook. I see football people, Jason Cole, my 30-year friend, every day he's writing Lamar. I don't sit here baked on NFL Network every day or ESPN or anything or Fox Sports, anything. But it feels like this is a really heavy story about the league, race, ownership, collusion, value, guaranteed money, the Players Association. Dude, it's got all of the Spielberg plot, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's just this is an unprecedented situation. We have never seen an MVP quarterback just now entering the prime of his career for his team to just kind of dangle him out there like, yeah, we want you at our price. Right, sort of. So, yeah, I mean, it's wild. I never thought it would get to this. I thought either one, they'd work out a contract, or two, if he did get the franchise tag, it would be the exclusive rights tag. And then if you want to trade him, I mean, you look at what the Houston got for Deshaun Watson, 3 firsts plus. Russell Wilson, they got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 or 3 players. The way this is lined up now, if they decide not to match that offer sheet, Lamar's gone for 2 firsts, which 2 first-round picks is a lot, but it's not a lot for a 26-year-old MVP quarterback who is arguably the hardest individual player in the entire NFL to defend.
You know what you get when you get rid of Lamar? You get $50 million of cap space now to go build your football team differently if you no longer bought in. So where you thought, and I think people on the outside, and again, they've tried to throw me out this year, although I'm so well sourced that they can't even throw me out properly. But they've tried like hell and keeping information away and things like that. Every part of this in the season to me, from the holdout moving forward, felt like a business decision and negotiation. And it also felt to me very much like the Ravens were not wanting to marry him at a guaranteed price. It felt to me like the not having an agent thing was always going to be a problem. And I never believed they were going to get it done. So I'm still of the mindset that if a week from Friday they wind up giving him 172 million of guaranteed or a number that's a substantial, real, like, Kyler Murray kind of number is the best number, or somebody comes forward and they match $165 million offer, I don't think they would match a legitimate offer. And I think that whatever that fear is, I think a real offer that would supersede wherever they were, 120, 130. I don't know if they'd match that at this point. I think the Cincinnati thing, I think the playoffs, and I'm wondering how, like, you see it out in the middle of Ohio when he's not there on the sideline waving a towel for a team that he's trying to get $200 million from.
It's not a great look. And again, you hit the nail on the head with not having an agent. That's been a disaster for him. And we're seeing that disaster play out. The gap between the legal tampering period opens Monday at noon. Free agency opens Wednesday at 4:00. If there is a team that's interested, these teams can call any other free agent they want or that free agent's representative and talk to them and work out a contract and be ready to sign on the dotted line Wednesday at 4. Since Lamar doesn't have an agent, he can't do that. Teams cannot reach out to him. It's tampering until Wednesday at 4. So it's just one more thing going against him. I think there's bad blood on both sides at this point. I think him not having an agent has hurt in that aspect as well, because when you've got that agent's kind of the buffer between the owner and the team. When the ownership makes an offer that the player thinks is low ball, then you've got the agent there like, well, that's just first offer. Let me do my job. Let me go to them. We'll work on it. I'll get you the money. They don't have that here. So I think you've got hurt feelings. I agree with you. The Ravens seem lukewarm at best when it comes to their commitment to Lamar. And that, as they say in dodgeball, that's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him, because going back to that, they hit the jackpot with Lamar Jackson, getting him with the last pick of the first round.
But is it the jackpot if they give him $250 million and he only plays 3 out of the next 5 seasons? And to your point, once there's bad blood, man, that's hard to back up off of for a young man of his caliber.
I have leaned this way for quite some time, that he played his last down for the Ravens. And when they put that non-exclusive franchise tag on him, that just sealed it for me. I'm with you. I do not see him playing for Baltimore in 2023. To me,
who's the suitor then? Now, who's the suitor then, Gary?
The one I keep coming back to is Washington. I know they're not interested. I know Sam Howell's the guy, blah, 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 blah. Not that NFL teams would ever lie. No, of course not. You've got a team with an owner, because there's been plenty of talk. Owners don't want to give Lamar Jackson a fully guaranteed contract or a contract with a lot of guarantees after the Watson fiasco, because that sets bad precedent. There's one owner in the National Football League right now who could not care less what the other 31 owners think of him, and that's the guy they're forcing out the door, which is Daniel Snyder. It's still his team now. So what's to stop him? Washington's a playoff caliber roster, other than a massive hole at quarter. It would be, for all the things Daniel Snyder has put fans of the Washington Commanders through over the past, 3 decades, it would be the single nicest thing he has ever done for that team to hand Lamar Jackson a bag of money.
Well, so you are a true believer in Lamar then. You believe he makes them a Super Bowl contender, and over the next 5 years will, I don't want to say win the Super Bowl, but will lead them to whatever the promised land for a franchise like that, right? That they start making the playoffs 2 or 3 years, win a game or two, playing a championship game. I'm not even laying will Lamar beat Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow from that conference going over. I would think an AFC team would look at it the way the Ravens look at it and say, we have Lamar, they have Burrow. We have Lamar, they have Josh Allen, they have Mahomes. How are we navigating January, the next 5 years? Is Lamar the guy to do that? Or is Lamar going to run into linebackers? Or is Lamar going to slow down? Or is Lamar ever really going to be happy here? Because we had that kid here. We kissed his ass. We gave him everything he wanted. He didn't show up at OTAs last year. He's holding up signs. He's embarrassing our owner. Our owner doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Like, Steve doesn't like this at all. Like, you know what I mean? Holding the sign up in the alcove after a nationally televised game. I mean, these were very unorthodox things that I think the Ravens, imagine the Ravens sign him and have to go back and renegotiate the way the Browns did with Deshaun Watson this week and get some money back for the cap. Like, I think it's problematic, and it's been problematic all along. Now the problem is, well, where's the suitor? Everybody thought, the internet thought teams would be lining up from here to Seattle to sign him, and everybody seems to have somebody in the seat, right? They all have a quarterback, but it doesn't feel like there's going to be a bidding war on Lamar Jackson.
I think an NFC team makes a lot more sense, only because, like you said, the AFC is just so loaded with young quarterbacks right now. Herbert and Allen and Mahomes and Burrow and Deshaun Watson, if he ever plays like the Deshaun Watson we saw before everything happened. The NFC, I mean, there's what? Jalen Hurts? I mean, how big a believer are you in Dak Prescott? Kirk Cousins? There's not the kind of quarterback talent on that side of the bracket as there is in the AFC. So I think it would make more sense for a team on that side. And I don't know that it's necessarily going to take a 5-year deal at this point. You know, what if we're talking about a 3-year deal that's mostly or even fully guaranteed? You know, if I'm a team like Washington that hasn't been relevant for ever, to me, that's worth a gamble. If you believe that Lamar Jackson makes you a Super Bowl contender, and in the NFC, I think he does.
The Washington thing's so weird because, like you'd say, they need to sell tickets. Dude, they need to sell integrity. You know what I mean? They like that. The integrity is the problem with that franchise. And if saying we brought the most exciting player in the sport here, and again, it is so weird because they're trying to get him out in 2 weeks. They're doing the owners' meetings out at the Biltmore, and they'll try to figure all that out. You know, the Colts, the Falcons wind up going in on Taylor Heineke. The teams that want draft picks, I can never argue with that, Gary. You know what I mean? Like, to me, if you're Carolina and you're like, we're just going to take a fresh kid out of the draft instead of promising this kid $50 million and he hasn't played past Thanksgiving in 3 years. You know, and has won one game after Christmas that's mattered in his career. And he has a statue, and he thinks he's going to get Jay-Z money. Like he just thinks it's top of class. He needs to get the most money. And the cranky owners, the collusive owners, the lack of integrity owners, I'll buy into all of that. I just think at this point, nobody's giving him 232. Nobody's giving anybody 232 because the original sin for all of them is owners versus union, suppress salaries at all costs, start at the top, suppress the salary of the best guy, and then work your way down.
Oh, absolutely. The owner's living nightmare was the idea of a player not only getting $46 million a season, but getting $46 million a season fully guaranteed for 5. They don't want to be baseball or basketball. Now, I think they should. I think NFL players should get fully guaranteed contracts, given what they put their body. But that's
maybe you saw Devin Hamlin on a stretcher. Maybe you're right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
But I understand Carolina. You know, you trade up for the first pick in the draft. That means you have your choice in a pretty good quarterback class. You know, do you want to shoot the moon and go for Anthony Richardson? Do you want to go with the guy that probably looks like he has the highest floor in a CJ Stroud? Whatever. You have options. I can even understand the Colts because they're sitting at 4. Maybe they'll have a choice of 2 guys. It depends on whether or not someone trades up to Arizona's spot because Arizona's not going to take a quarterback. Atlanta, I don't know what the hell the Falcons are doing. Spend like crazy in free agency over the first couple days, handing out big contracts left and right, and then decide that we're going to have our franchise led by Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder. One step forward, 2 steps back.
How are you going to win playoff games that way?
Now, how are you going to win that division that way? And it's not a good division. I mean, it's a division where the Saints are probably the favorite with Derek Carr. I mean, what's that tell you? You get a decent quarterback, you can win that division.
Gary Davenport is here. I brought him on to talk a little fantasy, and it's March Madness. We're going to be watching the Terps up at Hollywood Casino, and I'm sort of getting into the vibe of all of this free agency above and beyond Lamar. I tell you, Gary, I've had great guests on all week. Peter King came on. There's no oxygen to talk about Derek Carr or Tyler Heineke or, Jalen Hurts and how that sees. It's all Lamar here. And so many people are watching it. And I mentioned the Players Association and their role in all of this and him not having an agent. I don't know that they've done him any favorites.
Absolutely not. It's this whole saga with Lamar Jackson has been just a living 9 foot tall, neon glowing example of why players need representation at every step along the way. Because, we've heard plenty over this whole standoff about, what was offered and what Lamar wants and blah, 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 blah. How much of that do we really know is true? And I could guarantee you 80+% of what we have heard and what has been leaked to the media has come from one side. And it's not Lamar Jackson. Because, the Ravens have a PR staff. The Ravens have all kinds of experience dealing with the media, crafting a narrative. It's another one of those things that you need an agent and representation and a team so that they can do that for you.
I think the Ravens have done a terrible job of whatever the narrative is, right? I mean, the narrative is, to anybody who's been watching, they're not in love with the kid for whatever reason. Whenever the door shuts over there, it's certainly not the play on the field, but it could be the tolerance for not being available in January.
Oh yeah, the best ability is availability, and all those missed games over these past couple seasons have hurt. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but I look at some of the things Jackson could do when he is healthy, and then look at some of the starting quarterbacks around the NFL, and I'm like, wait, you don't want that guy? You would rather? I mean, Taylor Heineke, really? It's not like we haven't seen Taylor Heineke play a pretty good sized samples. I mean, at least Desmond Ritter's something of an unknown. He's only started a few games. Taylor Heineke's okay on a good day.
Yeah,
I mean,
everybody's trying to hit that Geno Smith thing or hit that Kurt Warner thing. Or, I mean, look, the Ravens with Flacco and with Lamar have drafted two capable winning quarterbacks without having the 1, 2, 3, or 4 pick, right? Like literally, and that's all the more reason, as I know their ego and I know who they are, that they'd be like, this kid's not holding my franchise up, right? Like, we're not going to be held hostage by our quarterback. So if he thinks he's holding the franchise hostage, that's not the kind of kid that's a leader here for us. That's the way I looked at it all along. And the way I looked at it for them was Harbaugh and DeCosta have jobs for life. Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh do not. In most organizations, they don't. I mean, in Cleveland, let's be honest. Deshaun Watson's going to get Stepnoski fired, right? That's just the way this works in the end. When the quarterback has $200 million of guaranteed money, in the end, he's going to outlive the coach. Around here, it doesn't work that way. And the kumbaya of the trust of Bisciotti and Harbaugh and DeCosta makes this different because the Ravens will march on. I mean, they'll just create a narrative and say, kid didn't want to be here. We love him. We'll take the picks. We invested all we could. He wasn't available in January. We love him, but wish him well in City X. But most franchises couldn't do this and get away with it.
Well, we don't know that Baltimore will get away with it either. And what happens if there's no real offer sheet? What happens if he winds up playing in 2023 under the salary tag for a team? I mean, under the franchise tag for a team that has already essentially said, hey, we don't want you. I mean, how uncomfortable and awkward is the season going to be at that point?
Well, how about when they draft a quarterback and they draft Stetson Bennett on, in the 6th round on, because all that could be coming down the pipeline as well. Gary Davenport is here. He covers the National Football League for Bleacher Report. For you, outside of Lamar, because you really do cover the whole league, where's your oxygen? What else are you thinking and looking at as we enter this period and some money is getting spent? And to your point, quarterbacks are finding seats. Look, man, we all gambling out in Ohio. I'm at Barstool Sports. What do the Ravens look like if they wake up next Thursday without Lamar Jackson and with a couple of draft? I mean, who plays? What would the Ravens look like without him this year?
A lot depends on what those draft picks look like. That's another thing that you got to factor in the equation. If, say, Indianapolis, it turns out that Jim Irsay secretly lusts after Lamar Jackson and the Colts make an offer and Baltimore doesn't match it, you're getting the 4th overall pick. There's your new quarterback right there. You're going to get one of Richardson, Stroud, Young, or Levis. Great. If it's Washington, you're talking about a pick outside the top 15. At that point, I mean, even some of the like bridge starters have a lot of those have already dried up, signed other places. Like Jameis Winston's headed back to New Orleans for another year, and Mike White signed to be the backup in. I can't remember.
Oh man, you just said bridge starter, man. We haven't said bridge starter here since Jeff Blake.
I mean, Tyler Huntley, I guess, becomes your guy.
Well, yeah, he
at
would be
least
the
in
bridge,
the short
right?
term. Right. It's
Which
the Ravens.
bridge would Todd Monken want to jump off of?
It's the Ravens have a great history of stability as a franchise, and that's why DeCosta and Harbaugh have the kind of clout to. A lot of teams would just be pressured into giving Lamar Jackson what he wanted because, oh my God, we can't be the guys who let Lamar Jackson walk out the door. But I still, this is a risky move by Baltimore. It's not that easy to go out there and find guys like Lamar Jackson. I mean, as a fan of the Cleveland Browns, I watched them swing at so many quarterbacks. I mean, everyone's seen that picture of the Browns quarterback jersey with the tape hanging off the back.
I was in Cleveland watching every one of them. Which one do you want? You want Dilfer, Garcia, Spurgeon, Wynn? What do you want? Give me one, Gary. You want Couch?
My first ever fantasy draft in 2004, I drafted Jeff Garcia in the third round. That was not my bright, shining moment.
Well, he's been nice to me over the years, but I wouldn't have wanted him on my fantasy team, especially if I were a guy like you bragging about my fantasy acumen.
And if you, like we've already said, the AFC is so loaded with quarterbacks. If you don't have that guy, the odds that you're going to be able to make a deep playoff run are slim to none. It's just not going to happen. It's not like the NFC where a San Francisco 49ers, it's loaded on defense and, has some skill position talent, which is another thing with the Ravens. I mean, people talk about the struggles Lamar Jackson has had throwing the ball. Are they ever going to get a receiving core that can help carry a bridge starter? Because, I mean, you got a so-so quarterback throwing to a bottom 5 wide receiver group. Going to be a lot of running the ball if you want to move it, and it's going to put them behind. And I don't know that it's a hole that they're going to be able to do. It's going to take them 2-3 years probably to dig out of the hole.
Gary, you can go find some of my old tapes from the 90s when I was Nasty Nestor. I used to have a keyboard here with sound effects, open a beer for you. I could do all that stuff. I had this the sound that was kind of like from the Family Feud where the big red X would go, eh. Every time you say bridge starter, I want to hit the button. Gary Davenport is here from Bleacher Report. Follow him in fantasy and daily fantasy and Fantasy Island and, all those things. Be My Fantasy Girl, all the great songs. So Ohio, your Browns, dude, it's so weird for me. Like, I was thinking of going to Pittsburgh this weekend to see John Mayer, and Mike Tomlin and I were texting him, thinking Pittsburgh, Baltimore, football, rivalry, all that stuff. Cleveland always thinks that there's something and they stink. And all of a sudden, we're all looking up at the Bengals and saying, well, they got the best player, right? I mean, we all admit that. And I sense this Northern Kentucky, Southern Ohio thing of this. And we saw it here in Baltimore when everything was a purple tent city and everything was being sold with Ray Lewis on it 20 years ago. It was all new and fresh and shiny. Boy, it feels like the Bengals are some way a rejuvenated franchise, even though it still says Mike Brown above the door.
Yeah, but I mean, they're headed for some tough decisions of their own. As we just saw on the first day of the legal tampering period, both their starting safeties, Jesse Bates and Von Bell, left, signed big deals with Bell went to Carolina, Bates went to Atlanta. And, Joe Burrow's headed into season 4, which means he's eligible for an extension. And, we're talking about all the money Lamar Jackson wants. How much is that? What's that Burrow deal going to look like? I mean, you're probably
now Joe Burrow hit the market this week on a $32 million. Give me two number ones.
Wednesday at 4:00, there would be
okay. Well, then, and his agent would have been on Monday pitting one against the other, and he might have $232 million a guarantee. Might, I don't know.
He might still wind up with $232 million guaranteed. If he goes to the Bengals and say, I want a fully guaranteed contract, what can they really do other than say, okay, he's taken them to a Super Bowl and to within a game of a Super Bowl. He's a Southern Ohio
They
kid.
better not screw that up, right? I mean, seriously.
I don't think even Mike Brown could screw that up. And I mean,
No,
he's
but I
got,
mean, you would say that about Lamar, right? I mean, injuries, money, guaranteed money, feelings, what my value is, where I'm happy. I mean, Burrow looks happy in Cincinnati. He
oh,
looks happy being the big guy in the middle of a place that has never had one.
well,
And
he's a hometown kid. He's from Athens, Ohio, which is about, I don't know, 45 minutes north of Cincinnati. It's college town. It's where Ohio University's at. So, I mean, he's playing in front of the hometown team. His family gets to come to the game, every home game every week. Yeah, it's a perfect situation for him, but that doesn't mean that when contract time comes around, he's still not going to want a bag of cash. Because if I was Joe Burrow, I'd want to get paid.
well, they certainly have done things around him to try to help him win, right? To your point with the wide receivers and protecting him and where the offensive line was in the Super Bowl a year and a half ago. And, it's hard. And Patrick Mahomes is good. And Josh Allen's good. And the Bills are good. And they're going to get better. And who's going to get better this week? And if the Ravens give Lamar Jackson $1 billion and sign him, have they gotten better? No, they've gotten a guy that hadn't been available. So I don't know that the perception of the Ravens even changes to they kept Lamar. Now they can win a little bit for a while until he gets hurt or ages out or whatever you would say about it. But the other side of that is, oh, Lamar's a Colt or a Commander. Well, who the hell is going to quarterback them? And I would think the Ravens are cocky enough, arrogant enough to say, we'll draft a quarterback. We did okay with the Flacco kid. You'll talk about Brian Billick and Chris Redman and Kyle Bowler. That was so Phil Savage ago. They'll just say that was 17 years ago. You know what I mean? They'll just say we're 2 for 2 on quarterbacks. Give us the draft picks. We'll go play bridge. You got me saying it. You and we'll march forward. And because we're not the Browns, we're not the Bengals. I'm Eric DeCosta. He's John Harbaugh. We're Steve Bisciotti. We know and maybe they'll take their licking this year. I don't, maybe that would be the penalty of not being hamstrung for 5 years. Bisciotti be like, I don't want to be stuck with that kid for 5 years on guarantee. I don't want him. I want something else. And if it costs me for a minute, because that's the way these guys think, man. They do. They really do.
I'm pretty sure come Wednesday at 4:00, if not then shortly thereafter, we're going to see an offer sheet. So it's going to be fascinating to see what other NFL teams are willing to pay Jackson. And much like with Watson last year, it only takes one. It only takes one Jimmy Haslam to kick in Andrew Berry's office door and say, go get that guy. I don't care what it costs, which is what happened last year because Cleveland was out of it. Deshaun Watson was not going to go to Cleveland. It was either going to be Carolina, Atlanta, or New Orleans. And then all of a sudden it was Cleveland. And the reason for that, $230 million in guarantees.
And they had cap space and they were desperate. Desperation creates a different circumstance, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when, Cleveland's been back, 25 years and the quarterback play has been mostly, Baker Mayfield's the highlight of those 25 years. So what's that tell you?
Well, and to my point with these arrogant men in Owings Mills, they're not desperate. They're arrogant, but they're not desperate. They're egotistical, but they're not going to lose a battle. They're not going to lose a battle then to lose the war. If they felt like Lamar was their guy and their chance and they're all in, it would feel different to me. It should feel different to Lamar. And if Lamar was all in, I think they'd feel differently about him. And that's the strangest thing of a kumbaya, them getting together after watching all of this, that he could be their quarterback 2 weeks from now. Like, I don't think there's, it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility at this point. And to your point, it could be a $32 million and here, take it or leave it or hold out or, hold us hostage, do whatever you're going to do. I just don't know that the Ravens want so much uncertainty. I think they want certainty after having so much uncertainty.
Oh, I agree with it. I think that when they put through the non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar, their hope was that someone would make a reasonable enough offer that they can refuse it without looking cheap. Because, if someone comes out and there's an offer for, 3 years, $105 million with $80 million guaranteed, that's the best offer you get on the open market, then the Ravens kind of have to match it, given what they allegedly already offered him. I think they're hoping that someone will go, 4 165 with 115 guaranteed, and they can say, nope, that's too rich for my blood. Give us a pick.
All right. Well, Gary, I love getting your insights. I'm sorry. I've been trying to track you down at some point because I don't see you at Super Bowls. A lot of people I saw at Super Bowls, I tried to sort of track down afterward because I didn't go this year. But I didn't talk a lot of football outside of market the last month or two. But it's been really interesting seeing people's and hearing people's perspectives and following your work out on social media and seeing like, oh, everybody's talking about Lamar. It's not just us. So, hey, man, I appreciate you confirming that.
Oh, I'd much rather talk about the Lamar Jackson situation than Aaron Rodgers. Just make up your mind, Aaron. Just pick.
You and me take him out on a peyote farm right there somewhere off Joshua Tree. Gary Davenport, just don't eat the green pills or the shrooms or the whatever the stuff there. I don't know what they're doing. I just hope he comes to a conclusion. And I like Joe Douglas. I want things to end well for him. So I'm on team JETS, Jets. Hey, take care of yourself. I'll see you further up down the line. And maybe after draft, we'll get together and assess all of our report cards.
Oh, anytime, sir.
All right, we'll see if Lamar Jackson's our quarterback on May 1st or not. I am Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. We're getting the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out on the road, presented by the Maryland Lottery, as well as our friends at Window Nation. And we're going to be watching a little bit of basketball up at the Hollywood Casino and the Barstool Sportsbook on Thursday with the Terps. Go Terps! Maryland, we're all behind you.